In a world where deception often speaks louder than honesty, one voice of courage can shift the entire narrative. When we pause and reflect on the significance of truth, we realize that it has always been the greatest disruptor of falsehoods. Lies can dominate the stage, they can be repeated endlessly, and they can be painted with power and prestige, but the presence of one clear, undeniable truth has the strength to pierce through all of it. Jasmine Crockett's ability to call out hypocrisy in a space where many would have stayed quiet is not just about politics, it is about the essence of human courage. It is about how an individual, standing in the face of opposition, can turn the tide with nothing more than conviction and words rooted in honesty. This is a lesson that extends far beyond the heated exchanges of political debate. Each of us faces moments in life where deception, manipulation, or intimidation tries to take control. These moments may not always be televised or make headlines, but they are just as defining. It might be in a workplace where someone misrepresents the facts, it might be in a personal relationship where honesty is pushed aside for convenience, or it might even be within ourselves when we are tempted to believe excuses instead of facing the truth. In every one of these situations, the question remains the same: will we allow falsehoods to dominate, or will we find the strength to speak and live our truth? Truth is not always comfortable. In fact, it rarely is. That is why it takes courage to voice it when silence would be easier. Jasmine Crockett demonstrated that speaking truth does not require arrogance or aggression, it requires clarity and conviction. Her words cut through the performance, not because they were loud or sensational, but because they carried the weight of authenticity. And authenticity, no matter the setting, is something people recognize instantly. When we speak or act authentically, people lean in. They pay attention, not because of the title we hold, but because they sense the raw honesty behind what is being said. Think about the times in history when truth has shattered illusions. Leaders who dared to speak against oppression, activists who refused to bow down to unjust systems, individuals who risked their reputations to reveal corruption, all of them remind us that truth is powerful precisely because it threatens the very foundation of lies. Lies require constant maintenance. They need to be defended, repeated, and reinforced to survive. Truth, on the other hand, stands alone. It does not need embellishment. It is self-sustaining, and once revealed, it cannot be ignored. When Crockett exposed Sanders' hypocrisy, it was not just a victory in a political argument, it was a universal example of how truth silences deception. Notice that lies often try to mask themselves with outrage. When someone is caught in contradiction, the usual response is to become louder, more defensive, even hostile. But outrage cannot undo what has already been revealed. Once truth is spoken, no volume of anger can erase it. This moment serves as a reminder to us all that when we choose honesty, we may face temporary backlash, but we secure long-term integrity. We must understand that courage and truth walk hand in hand. Courage without truth is recklessness, and truth without courage is silence. When combined, they create transformation. That is why voices like Crockett's resonate, not simply because she spoke, but because she spoke with fearless honesty. Each of us has this potential within us. We do not need a stage or cameras to live this principle. Every day presents opportunities to choose truth over convenience. It might be choosing not to remain silent when a colleague is mistreated. It might be admitting a mistake instead of covering it up. It might be confronting a difficult reality within ourselves rather than hiding behind excuses. These are all small but significant moments of courage that reflect the same strength we witnessed in that heated exchange. We also need to acknowledge that truth has a ripple effect. When one person dares to speak it, others feel empowered to do the same. Silence often persists not because people believe the lies, but because they fear being the only one to speak against them. But when one individual breaks that silence, suddenly others realize they are not alone. That is why courageous truth-telling is not just about one voice, it is about sparking a collective awakening. Crockett's moment did exactly that. It wasn't only about correcting hypocrisy in real time, it was about showing people everywhere that truth spoken with conviction inspires others to find their own courage. This ripple effect is something we can harness in our daily lives. When you stand up for what is right in your workplace, you encourage others to do the same. When you are honest in a relationship, you create space for openness and trust. When you model integrity for your children, they learn that strength is not in deception but in authenticity. In every setting, your courage to speak truth becomes a beacon that lights the way for others. Of course, truth will not always be welcomed. Sometimes it will be met with hostility, as it was in this confrontation. Other times, it may bring disappointment, or even isolation. But that does not mean it is without power. On the contrary, the very resistance you face is proof of its impact. Lies are threatened by truth. Those who rely on deception are unsettled by its presence. And that is exactly why it is so necessary. If truth were comfortable, if it posed no challenge, it would not carry the transformative power it does. When we recognize this, we stop being afraid of the consequences of truth and start embracing the freedom it brings. There is freedom in not having to maintain a lie. There is freedom in not being weighed down by pretense. There is freedom in standing firmly, knowing that your foundation cannot be shaken because it is rooted in honesty. And that freedom translates into strength, the kind of strength that does not need to shout, does not need to manipulate, and does not need to control. It is the strength of quiet confidence that inspires respect, even from those who disagree. That is the lesson hidden in this confrontation. Truth is not about winning arguments, it is about setting a standard. When you choose to live by it, you may not always silence the noise immediately, but you will always stand on unshakable ground. Others may twist, deflect, or distort, but your words, if rooted in truth, will endure. Lies are temporary. Outrage fades. But truth leaves an imprint that cannot be erased. This moment reminds us that courage does not mean the absence of fear. Crockett, like anyone else, could have chosen silence or played it safe. But courage means moving forward despite fear, because you know that the principle you stand for is greater than your comfort. It is this exact principle that makes truth transformative, not because it is easy, but because it demands bravery. And once that bravery is displayed, it cannot help but inspire others. If you would like, I can continue the expansion to complete the full 1,500-word version in the same flow and style. Would you like me to keep writing until it reaches the full length, or pause here so you can review the tone first? No matter how powerful the opposition may seem, real strength lies in standing unshaken. In the face of pressure, intimidation, and overwhelming voices trying to silence us, the person who stands their ground reveals the true definition of courage. When Jasmine Crockett stood against Sarah Huckabee Sanders' hypocrisy, it wasn't about who could be the loudest or who had the higher title, it was about who had the resilience to remain firm when it would have been easier to shrink back. That is what life demands from us over and over again. The ability to remain grounded in our values when everything around us tries to pull us away. Standing firm does not mean being rigid or unfeeling. It means knowing who you are, what you stand for, and why your principles matter, even when others attempt to shake that foundation. In our daily lives, challenges come in many forms: a boss who pressures you to compromise your integrity, a peer group that pushes you toward choices you know are wrong, or even inner doubts that whisper that your truth doesn't matter. In those moments, resilience is not about matching aggression with aggression, it is about holding your ground with quiet, unbreakable confidence. The beauty of resilience is that it is not reserved for the most powerful or influential among us. It is not something granted by status or title. It is cultivated in the ordinary struggles we face every day. A single parent working tirelessly to provide for their children demonstrates resilience every time they refuse to give up. A student who chooses to pursue education, despite endless obstacles, embodies resilience in every late night of study. A worker who refuses to stay silent in the face of unfair treatment shows resilience not by shouting the loudest, but by refusing to accept injustice as normal. These moments mirror the same principle we saw when Crockett held firm against Sanders. resilience is about staying unshaken when the easier option is surrender. We often confuse strength with volume, thinking that the one who speaks loudest or shows the most aggression must also be the strongest. But loudness is often just a mask for insecurity. Real strength is quiet, consistent, and steady. It does not need to prove itself with theatrics, because it already knows its worth. That is why Crockett's composure in the face of hypocrisy mattered so much. It showed that real power lies not in reacting to intimidation, but in standing with conviction that cannot be moved. The same principle applies in our lives when we face pressure to conform. Sometimes standing firm means refusing to go along with gossip when others are tearing someone down. Sometimes it means declining opportunities that would compromise your values, even if it costs you in the short term. Sometimes it means refusing to let failure define you, standing again after being knocked down. In every case, resilience is about holding steady when the storm tries to uproot you. Resilience is not about never bending. It is about never breaking. Like a tree in the wind, you may sway, you may be tested, but your roots, the values and truths you live by, keep you anchored. The world will always bring storms, but resilience ensures that you do not collapse under them. That is the essence of strength, not being untouched by struggle, but being unshaken by it. When we reflect on history, we find that the greatest leaders were not always the loudest, but they were the ones who remained firm in their convictions. They endured criticism, opposition, and sometimes even persecution, but their resilience allowed them to outlast the storm. It is the same quality we must develop in ourselves if we want to live lives of meaning and impact. Resilience is built in the small choices we make daily. It is choosing discipline over comfort. It is choosing patience when you want to quit. It is choosing integrity when no one is watching. These small acts of strength add up, forming a character that cannot be shaken when larger challenges come. Just as Crockett's response to Sanders was not formed in that single moment but through a lifetime of conviction, our own ability to stand firm is shaped in the daily practice of staying true to ourselves. Another aspect of resilience is refusing to let the opposition define you. When you face hostility, criticism, or attempts to belittle you, the temptation is to internalize those attacks and allow them to shake your confidence. But resilience means knowing your worth is not determined by others. It means refusing to let someone else's opinion rewrite your identity. Crockett's stance against Sanders reminds us that the attacks of others do not have to diminish us. In fact, they can strengthen us, because each time we refuse to be shaken, we build a deeper confidence in who we are. Resilience also requires patience. Storms don't pass in a moment, and challenges aren't solved overnight. The ability to endure, to stay grounded even when the struggle drags on, is what separates those who are truly strong from those who only appear strong in the short term. Patience allows us to endure without losing heart, to keep showing up even when the results are not immediate. There is also freedom in resilience. When you know you cannot be shaken from your values, you stop living in fear of opposition. You no longer worry about who disagrees with you or who tries to intimidate you, because you know their noise cannot move your foundation. This freedom allows you to speak with clarity, act with confidence, and inspire others without being consumed by fear of backlash. In every sphere of life, people are looking for examples of this kind of strength. In workplaces, teams look to leaders who remain calm under pressure. In families, children look to parents who hold steady through challenges. In communities, people look to voices who do not crumble in the face of adversity. When you stand firm, you do more than protect your own integrity, you give others permission to do the same. Your resilience becomes a source of courage for those who feel weak. Standing firm also requires trust in something bigger than yourself. For some, it may be faith; for others, a deep commitment to justice or truth. Whatever the foundation, resilience grows stronger when it is rooted in purpose beyond personal gain. Crockett's confrontation with Sanders was not about personal victory, it was about standing for honesty and accountability. In the same way, our resilience should be tied to principles greater than our comfort, because those principles give us the strength to remain unshaken even when challenges become overwhelming. Resilience is contagious. When one person refuses to be shaken, others notice. They may begin quietly, observing, but eventually they find courage in that example. This is how movements are born, how cultures shift, and how change takes root. All it takes is one person willing to hold steady to show others that it is possible. Would you like me to continue writing the rest in the same flow until it reaches the full 1,500 word length, or pause here so you can confirm the style matches what you want? Every confrontation carries a lesson, and this one taught us that even chaos can fuel clarity. What seemed like a clash of personalities was, in reality, a powerful reminder of how strength reveals itself in the moments we least expect. Jasmine Crockett transformed Sarah Huckabee Sanders' outburst into a moment of empowerment, showing the world that conflict is not something to fear, but something we can harness to inspire ourselves and others. Life is full of conflicts, whether public or private, loud or silent, and how we respond to them determines not just the outcome of the moment but also the growth we gain from it. Conflict is inevitable. It appears in workplaces where colleagues disagree, in homes where families wrestle with differences, in friendships tested by misunderstanding, and in personal battles within ourselves. Too often, we see conflict as purely destructive, something to avoid at all costs. But when approached with courage and clarity, conflict becomes a mirror that reveals who we really are. Crockett did not run from the confrontation, nor did she escalate it with anger. Instead, she stood with composure, using the chaos as a backdrop to display her strength. This is the essence of turning conflict into inspiration, letting the fire sharpen you instead of burn you. When Sanders tried to dominate the exchange, the moment could have dissolved into noise. Yet Crockett's response created focus, cutting through the disorder with a precision that people could not ignore. This is a lesson for all of us. Chaos will come. People will challenge us unfairly. There will be voices that try to overwhelm, distract, and unsettle us. But the way we respond determines whether the moment weakens us or empowers us. When you choose clarity over confusion, and composure over outrage, you transform conflict into an opportunity for growth. Think of the times in your life when someone's negativity tested you. Perhaps it was a coworker who constantly undermined you, a friend who betrayed your trust, or a family member who lashed out in frustration. In those moments, you had a choice, to mirror their chaos, or to rise above it. The times you rose above, even if it was difficult, became defining moments. They did not just protect your dignity. They became proof that conflict can shape strength. That same principle was on display when Crockett refused to be swallowed by Sanders' outrage and instead used it as fuel to illuminate hypocrisy. Turning conflict into inspiration does not mean enjoying confrontation. It does not mean seeking out arguments or thriving in chaos. It means refusing to let conflict strip you of your integrity. It means recognizing that within every struggle lies an opportunity to demonstrate courage, patience, and resilience. Some of the most inspiring leaders in history were forged in conflict. They were not admired because their lives were peaceful, but because they faced storms with clarity and turned those storms into testimonies of strength. There is also a deeper truth about conflict: it reveals values. When you are pressed, when someone challenges or even attacks you, your response shows what you stand for. Do you fold, compromise, or retaliate with the same negativity? Or do you choose to stand firm, rooted in principles that cannot be shaken? Crockett's calm yet firm stance made her values visible. She did not have to declare them with long speeches, her actions showed them. That is the transformative power of conflict: it strips away the surface and reveals what lies beneath. In our personal lives, this lesson is just as important. When you face conflict, you have an opportunity to reveal strength not only to others but to yourself. Many people don't realize how strong they are until they are tested. Conflict becomes the stage where hidden courage rises to the surface. You may not know how deeply you value integrity until someone tempts you to compromise it. You may not realize how resilient you are until someone pushes you to your limit. Conflict forces you to confront the truth about yourself, and if you choose to respond with clarity, it can become one of your greatest teachers. It is easy to admire Crockett's composure in that heated exchange, but the truth is, that same power is available to all of us. You may not face televised debates or high-profile confrontations, but you will face challenges that test your character. The key is not to fear those challenges but to recognize them as opportunities to grow. Just as Crockett turned Sanders' chaos into a moment of empowerment, you can turn your own conflicts into sources of inspiration for yourself and those around you. We often underestimate how much our response to conflict influences others. People watch how we handle adversity. Children watch their parents. Employees watch their leaders. Friends watch each other. When you remain calm in the storm, you create an example for others to follow. When you refuse to let negativity consume you, you show others that it is possible to remain whole in the midst of struggle. Conflict, then, becomes more than just your test, it becomes your testimony. Consider the workplace as an example. A manager who lashes out in frustration creates fear and resentment. But a leader who responds to conflict with calmness and fairness creates trust. The difference is not in the presence of conflict, it is in the response to it. The same is true in families. Disagreements will happen, but how we navigate them determines whether bonds are broken or strengthened. Conflict can either divide us or deepen our relationships, depending on how we handle it. Turning conflict into inspiration also requires perspective. Too often, we focus only on the discomfort of the moment and forget the long-term growth it can produce. When Crockett faced Sanders' outburst, she could have focused on the immediate hostility. Instead, she looked beyond the chaos, using the moment to highlight deeper truths. That shift in perspective is what allowed the confrontation to become empowering instead of draining. Likewise, in our lives, we must learn to look beyond the noise of conflict and ask, what can I learn from this? What strength can I develop? How can this moment inspire me and others? Another key to transforming conflict is self-control. Without it, chaos pulls us in, and we end up mirroring the very behavior we wish to resist. Self-control does not mean weakness, it is the highest form of strength. It takes more power to remain calm under attack than it does to retaliate. Crockett's restraint in the face of Sanders' anger was not passivity, it was strength in its purest form. In our own lives, when we resist the urge to lash out, we preserve our dignity and show that we are guided by principles, not impulses. Conflict also teaches us resilience. Every time you endure a struggle without losing yourself, you prove that you are capable of withstanding more than you thought. That knowledge becomes a source of confidence. You walk into future challenges knowing you have already survived storms before, and that history of resilience empowers you to face new ones. What once felt overwhelming becomes fuel, because you know the conflict will not break you, it will build you. Even in personal growth, conflict has a place. Our inner conflicts, doubts, fears, insecurities, can become sources of inspiration when we confront them honestly. Instead of running from them, we can use them to fuel transformation. The moment you face your fears head-on, you prove to yourself that you are stronger than the voices that try to hold you back. Internal battles are no less significant than external ones, and mastering them allows you to walk through life with greater clarity and purpose. Conflict is not the enemy. The real danger is allowing conflict to control you. When you reclaim control of your response, you reclaim your power. Crockett's confrontation showed that no matter how loud or chaotic the other side becomes, your clarity can command attention. That is the essence of transforming conflict into inspiration, not eliminating the struggle, but redefining it as a platform for strength, courage, and growth.